JT Crowley is Talking Books. On the show, you'll hear from emerging talent and seasoned veterans from around the world.
Hello and welcome. I'm JT Crowley, and today on my show, I am absolutely delighted to write the co-writers of the Angel Falls series. And, well, you ask yourself, well, how do these two do this, write these books? Because Judi is from outside of Houston in Texas, and Charlene is from Denver in Colorado. So how do they do it? Well, it's simple. They have lots of Zoom meetings, they have lots of emails, texts, and drop boxes. Who does what in the books? They work together extremely well to compile this. And they do work on them, and doing lots of things. They do re-editing and re-editing. And there's a little story here, everybody. This is the second time we've done this show, this podcast, because the first one didn't quite work out as to how I wanted it. So we're doing a second one. And Judi commented, I think it was Judi, who says, well, that was just the dress rehearsal. So now, Charlene and Judi not only have written the Angel Falls series, and they've written 5 series, everybody, different books. So, as I said, they've co-written a fair number of books across 5 series. There are the Angel Falls series, 9 books. Chance O'Brien series has got 5 books. Secondhand Heart series has got 2 books. The Dixieland Danger series has got 2 books, and the Texas Plains series has got 3 books. Now, for the purpose of this podcast, we're going to concentrate on the Angel Falls series. Now, we're not going to do all 9 books, everybody, because we would be here forever and a night. We are just going to do the first book in the series, which is Angel Falls, and the latest book, Dark Flights. And even within those books, we have already chosen which chapters to focus on, which we feel best represents both books. So we're not going to be going through both the books in full detail. That's not the purpose of this podcast. The whole purpose of this podcast is to give you, the audience, a flavor of what these 2 books and the Angel Falls series is about. If you want to know more, that's very simple. Go to the written version, which accompanies this podcast. There you'll see the web pages, you'll see where the social media sites, and there you'll see a short written versions of what the other series of books are about in the Angel Falls series. And again, so the webpage will also take you to the other series that they've written, and on Amazon link as well. The Amazon file is very, very important. That's where they put the book out onto. So all the links are on the written version that accompanies this podcast. So I think I've done a fair enough introduction. So what I would like to do now is to ask Judi to tell us who these 2 are, everybody. Who is Charlene Tess and who is Judi Thompson? And where did the concept of the Angel Falls series originate from? Judi.
Thank you, John, for the nice introduction. I'm Judi Thompson of the Tess Thompson writing team, and my sister is Charlene Tess.
Hi there, everybody.
I'm the fly-by-the-seat of her pants sister, where Charlene is more organized and a planner. Evidently, it makes for a good writing partners, because we've been writing books for several years now, and we've never disagreed about anything of our writing. The Angel Falls series is built around a fictitious town by the same name that's located in the Sangria de Cristo Mountains in New Mexico. It's a romantic mystery, but the book didn't start out to be a series. The secondary characters that we wrote were just crying out to us for their own stories. So we wrote a second book, and then we wrote a third book, and now we're up to book 9 in the series.
Now, Judi, so that the audience can get a flavor of what these books are about, let's go to chapter 1 in the first book of the series, Angel Falls. Now, as I've already said, we're not going to go to all the chapters, everybody, so we're going to touch on 4 chapters in this book, and then 4 chapters in Dark Flights. And
Okay.
I have to make it very clear, you can read these books in any order because the storylines are standalone in each book. But what makes it a series, everybody, are the characters that run through the books. Quite a few of the characters are in a lot of the books. So it's not the storylines that makes the series, it's the characters that really do make this series. In particular, Bella Morales, the psychic old lady, and she really is. She is the key to a lot of the stories in the Angel Falls series. So, Judy, chapter 1. Here you rightly so introduce us to Maggie Magdalene Morales and her great-grandmother, Bella Morales. The end of the camping season is coming towards an end, and someone spooked the horses, putting Maggie and Bella on alert. And a tall, slim man, Russell Murphy, walks into their lives. And for me, you cleverly, very cleverly, put a hint of romance right away into the books, physical attraction. And of course, the entire series, you've struck a very romantic storyline with mystery. This is what they're about, everybody. So this chapter really did catch my attention. Judy, would you like to briefly tell us what's in this chapter?
Yes. Chapter 1 of the Angel Falls series introduces our three main characters in the book: Russell Murphy, Maggie Morales, and Bella Morales. Bella Morales is that 85-year-old woman with psychic powers that owns Cielo Verde. It's a lodge and a campground in the mountains outside of Angel Falls. Maggie is recently divorced, and she is Bella's great-granddaughter. Maggie's ex-husband has been harassing both of them, trying to get them to sell the land. And the land has been in Bella's deceased husband's hands since the early 1800s. It's late afternoon, and Maggie and Bella and their dog Boney begins to bark. And it's not usual for him to do that. He usually doesn't bark. Maggie goes outside, grabs her shotgun, and goes outside. And she sees a pickup truck driving away off the driveway, and all of the horses have been let out of the pen. And she just knows it's her ex-husband and that he's responsible, and he's harassing them again. Then she looks around and she looks up at the mountain, and she sees something coming down one of the deer trails. And she thinks it's an animal, maybe a deer. And then she looks some more and she says, no, it's a bear. And as it gets closer and closer, you realize it's not an animal at all, but it's a man. Russell Murphy walks down off the mountain and into Maggie and Bella's lives. He's a big man with long, dirty hair, a full beard, and Boney doesn't bark. Who is this dangerous man? Is he dangerous? Who is he? Is he there to harm them? And where did he come from? And why isn't Boney barking at this? And Bella is not afraid of him. Bella knows Russell Murphy has secrets and guilt. And what is he running from? That's chapter 1.
It is, everyone. It's intrigue, it's mystery, and there's a little bit of romance building here. Now, Charlene, I want to take the audience further into the book. So can we head to chapter 10? Here we see Russell sitting in the emergency vet clinic for something has happened to Boney, the Morales dog. And while he's sitting there, he's reflecting on his own life. You start to give us a glimpse as to who he is, or rather, where he came from. There's been a fire at the ranch. No one has died. The old feisty lady Bella is in hospital. Uh-oh. Wanda Eastman plays a significant role in this section of the book. A spat between Russell and Mayor O'Donnell takes place. Charlene, what are you two up to here in this chapter? Please tell us.
Oh, I'd be delighted to. All right. In the chapter that precedes chapter 10, we learned that Russ and Maggie are falling in love, and they've gone out to dinner together. And while they're gone, two men come to the resort after dark and set fire to the barn. Bella hears something and she grabs her shotgun and rushes out of the house to defend her property. And Boney follows her, of course. And when she gets out there, one of the men knocks her to the ground and they shoot the dog. And now we're in chapter 10, where Maggie has gone to the hospital to be with Bella, and Russ is waiting in the emergency room at the veterinary clinic because Boney is in surgery. When the vet tells Russell that the dog will have a limp, but it will live, tears gather in his eyes. And we can see that this brawny, muscular man has a very tender heart. Russ had never had a dog before, and he loves Boney. We learned that Russell didn't come from a happy home, and he doesn't have an extended family, only his father, stepmother, and his stepbrother named Hugh. And we will come back to Hugh later in the book. Thinking about this fire takes Russell back in time to another fire and the horrible memories that he's trying to outrun. At this point, the reader does not know anything else about the earlier fire. Russ calls Maggie to tell her about Boney and to check on Bella, and Maggie asks him if he will be back soon. It's not her words, but it's the longing in her voice that tells Russell that she really needs him. This is very significant because since everyone that Maggie has ever loved has died, except for Bella, she doesn't want to need anyone, and she only trusts herself. When Russ gets back to the hospital, Wanda Eastman arrives and hugs Maggie. Wanda is Roddy Eastman's mother, and Roddy, as you'll learn later, is Maggie's childhood friend. He's also a lawyer, and he will play an important role in part 2 of the book. Bella has a special place in Wanda's heart because Bella was so good to her and her husband when the husband was ill. We learned that Bella's going to be all right. She doesn't have any brain damage, but she is all battered and bruised, and she has a concussion. And when she wakes up, she remembers that the men had come to burn down her barn, and she asks about Boney. Russell says he's going home to shower and change, but first he has some very important business to attend to. He goes to City Hall and punches Mayor Lyman Odell in the jaw. Lyman is Maggie's ex-husband, and he's stunned to learn that someone has hurt Bella. He says he had nothing to do with it, and he would never hurt her. And Russell is inclined to believe him. When Russell turns to leave, Lyman says, "I won't forget this, Russell." And then in part 2, when there's a knock on the door and Russell's shocking past is revealed, we realize that Lyman meant what he said.
Oh, we do, everybody, we do. Now let's go to part 2, everybody. Now, Judy, let's delve further into the book to whet the audience appetite, and let's go to chapter 21, because this is in part 2. Now, in part 2, that begins at chapter 18, everybody, in this book. You take us back to Russell's old stamping ground. You feed us a few tidbits around his business life. He's out of jail. Darren, his business partner, is quite a capable partner. Bella's saying the truth will come out. The police are sniffing around Darren, asking him about Russell's relationship with his wife, Sarah, former wife, shall we say, as there are suspicions into Sarah and Emma's death, as the medical examiner has ruled their deaths as a homicide. For me, I think this is you two ratcheting up the narrative here, throwing spanners into the works, making the reader really think, what are they doing to us here. So what are you doing to us here, Judi?
Well, in this chapter, Maggie is shocked to learn that Russell isn't who she thought he was. He's a wealthy owns a wealthy software design company in Albuquerque, and Murphy isn't even his last name. It's his middle name. And Maggie and Bella have followed Russell to Albuquerque after he's been arrested for the murder of his wife and his child, who died in a fire. And when Russell left home to go up into the mountains after the funerals, he didn't know that their deaths were a homicide. He always thought that they were accidental, and he blamed himself because he wasn't home when it happened. After Maggie and Bella arrived in Albuquerque, Russell is released from jail with Roddy's help because his stepbrother Hugh comes forward with an alibi and says that Russell was with him. Maggie goes with Russell to Russell's business that he owns there in Albuquerque, and she sees a whole different side of him now as the brilliant software engineer and designer and a businessman with multi-million dollar company. She only knew him before as the man that came off the mountain and helped her hold on to her land against her ex-husband. We also meet Darren, his business partner, and Olive, one of his operational managers in the software company. And the three of them have known each other since college. We learn that Darren isn't what he appears to be, and that he has betrayed Russell in the worst way. If Russell is innocent, then who's guilty? Is it Darren? Is it his stepbrother Hugh? Who killed his wife and child? He learns they were both sleeping with his wife, and that his friend Olive knew all about it and didn't tell him. He's at a very low point in this chapter, feeling betrayed by his friends and his brother. And we see in this chapter how much he needs and trusts Maggie, but he doesn't know where to go from there.
Do you know what? I'm so glad we've done this second attempt at doing this interview, because I'm learning more about the book, actually, because none of this came out in the first one, everybody. Now, Charlene, let's go to chapter 29, and here you've got the characters at the Mexican restaurant in Albuquerque. Bella and Maggie are late. Russell, Roddy, and Olive are already seated. So, firstly, who are Roddy and Olive? Now, I know Judy's briefly touched upon them, and how significant are they to the storyline in part 2 of this book? Maggie is talking about not wanting to spend one more minute talking about someone who has done nothing but consumed everyone's time. Hugh is dead. Now, we already know who Hugh is, but I was wondering if you could just elaborate a little bit more. Is Maggie pregnant? Morning sickness? Have we got trust issues here? Accusations of murder? Maggie, for me, is attempting to see why Russell's married Sarah. Why did Russell marry Sarah? She's intrigued now. This is a very busy chapter, everybody. There's lots going on in it. So, Charlene, spill the beans. What are you and Judi taking us here on what's journey, and where's the spanners going this time?
Okay, this is an example of Judi's complicated plots that she loves to write. This chapter occurs after two important things in the plot were revealed in earlier chapters. We find out that Russell's stepbrother, Hugh, has committed suicide, and it is assumed now that he is the one that killed Russell's wife and daughter. Maggie is pregnant with Russell's child, but Russell doesn't know. Maggie feels Bella's disapproval about not telling Russell, but Maggie hasn't told him because he was under so much stress and she didn't want to add to that. She also doesn't want him to think that she was trying to trap him. She knew the only reason he married Sarah, his first wife, was because Sarah was pregnant. So chapter 29 begins when Maggie and Bella arrive late at a Mexican restaurant and they're meeting Russell and friends. She greets Roddy and Olive. And by this time, Roddy is more than just Maggie's childhood friend. He is also Russell's defense attorney in the trial. Olive is the business manager at Russell's company, and Olive tries to initiate conversation about Hugh's suicide, but Maggie doesn't want to talk about it. Russell doesn't either. He says, "Excuse me if I can't take pleasure in realizing that my dead brother murdered my wife and daughter." And Russell is very stressed and drinking heavily and orders another drink. When the appetizers arrive, the smell of the food just gags Maggie, and she runs to the restroom to be sick. After she leaves, Olive raises a glass for a toast to congratulate Russell. But he's confused. "What are you talking about?" he asks. She says, "Your baby, of course." When Maggie returns from the restroom, everyone is gone except for Russell, and he furiously confronts her. "How long have you known? Why did I have to find out from Olive? Why didn't you tell me?" Maggie explains that she was waiting for the right time. He's angry, so he drives her back to the hotel. And on the way, he asks her if Roddy knows, implying that Roddy could be the father. And then he comes out and asks her, "I am the father, aren't I?" And then he quickly apologizes. Too late. That does it. She says she's going home back to Cielo Verde. She and Bella are leaving. She loves him, and she tells him she's going to have his baby, whether he ever forgives her or not. And this chapter shows us that Russ still has trust issues because of his first wife's betrayal, and that Maggie loves him, but she's strong and independent, and if she has to, she can make it on her own.
There you go. Now, I think we've given the listeners, the audience, enough of a flavour of the first book. So we're going to quickly move on to the second book, everybody. And that is Dark Flight. Now, it's the 9th book in the series, and it's the latest book in the series. And as I said, you can read all the books in the series in whatever order you want to, but it's preferable to read them from the first book, Angel Falls, in order, because the characters, that's the link. The characters are the link, not the stories. So, Judy, let's open this book and head straight to chapter 1. Now, you and Charlene wanted me to emphasize this chapter, but I initially was going to go to chapter 5. But you wanted to go to chapter 1 because you said it was so significant because it links the two books together. So, and when I look at this chapter, here, we've got the character Bert Lyle features here very heavily. We've got Matt Bentley, the ATF detective, whose evidence put Bert Lyle away in the first place. He's concerned about his safety, having learned about the escape from prison by Bert Lyle. And Maggie and Bella are back. Well, the floor's all yours, Judy. Tell us.
Okay.
Whoa, where are you taking us with this new book of yours? The floor's all yours.
Well, Dark Flight takes place 6 years after Angel Falls, the Angel Falls book, the storyline. And we wrote this book as a love letter to our readers who've always said that Bella is their favorite character. And so Bella is very prominent in this book. It begins with the escape of Bert Lyle, Tom Harrison, and another man from the state prison in New Mexico, in Santa Fe. Bert Lyle has been in prison the last 10 years of his life sentenced for murder. To life in prison for murder. And Lyle arranged for Harrison to escape because the other man has a cabin high in the mountains where they think they can hide undetected for months until it's safe to head south of the border. Now, in this chapter, we are talking about Matt Bentley, is the ATF agent that put Lyle in prison. Matt Bentley is also a character that was introduced in one of our earlier books called Dark Truths. Matt tells his wife, Sunshine, that Lyle has vowed revenge, and Matt is confident Lyle will try to harm him, his wife, and his children. Sunshine and the kids have been invited to go on a camping trip up in the Sangria de Cristo Mountains, along with Maggie Morales, her great-grandmother Bella from our first book, Angel Falls, and Dr. Harper King and her son Bobby from our book, Dark Moments. Matt thinks that the camping trip in the mountains will be the safest place for his family until Lyle is caught. But is it going to be? Bella is in her 90s now, but we are all reminded that she is brave, feisty, and she has ESP.
I have to say, Charlene, that's a very interesting introduction from Judy. But I want to go now to my chapter, everybody. Chapter 5. This is Matt recalling his days at Bert Lyle's sawmill. He's an undercover agent for the ATF who suspected the sawmill operation was a cover-up for more sinister undertakings. The prearranged contrived fights set up by the ATF to give Matt Bentley some credibility in Bert Lyle's eyes are very intriguing. So talk to me, Charlene, about what the readers can gain from this part of the book.
Okay. The reader learned in chapter 1 that Bert Lyle and Thomas Harrison had escaped from the prison in Santa Fe, and they were on the loose somewhere in New Mexico. In the previous chapter, from chapter 5, the ATF agent Matt Bentley and other members of the law enforcement team went to the prison. And while they were there, Matt finds his own picture in Bert Lyle's cell, and the words, "You're a dead man," are scrawled across his face. Bert Lyle is out for revenge because Matt was the ATF agent that put him in prison. The first scene in chapter 5, as John mentioned, is a flashback, which reveals that several years ago, ATF agent Matt Bentley had infiltrated Bert Lyle's operation and lived with Lyle and his men at the rustic camp in the forest. Lyle's small lumber mill was actually serving as a front for his real business of stealing guns and selling them to the cartels. At the camp, Matt meets a young man whom Lyle calls the Hobbit, and Matt says he will call the young man Frodo. Matt explains to the young man that Frodo was a hero in the Lord of the Rings. This makes Frodo feel good, and they form a deep connection that foreshadows something that will be significant later in the book. Matt must keep up the front as a dangerous thug by getting into fights with the other men. And whenever possible, he gets messages to the other ATF agents to keep them in the loop. Matt is in a dangerous, precarious situation, and he's constantly being watched while he's at the camp. This flashback shows Matt's strength of character.
And
that's the end of that one.
And of course, the young guy didn't really get the Frodo thing, from the Lord of the Rings, did he?
Well, I think that Matt, he didn't go into detail, but he made the young man feel good because Lyle was belittling him, and Matt told him, "I'm going to call you Frodo," and he was a hero.
Mm. Let's jump a fair bit into the book now, Judy, with chapter 22. The plane ride. Bert Lyle and his associate forced Melanie and Rico to undertake to an undisclosed destination. You even manage to get the slightest glimmer of romance into this chapter. This is a short chapter that is between, and of course the romance is between the pilots, Melanie and Rico. Where's this plane going, Judy? But more importantly, what ride are you and Charlene taking the reader on?
Oh, it's a dangerous ride.
It is.
In each of our books, we introduce or have a new romantic storyline. And so in this book, Melanie Harlow and Rico Espinosa are our romantic storyline. And Melanie Harlow is a retired Army helicopter pilot that now works at the Angel Flower Airport, and she gives flying lessons. And Melanie was introduced in one of our books in as a secondary character, Dark Memories. And Rico Espinosa, as the deputy sheriff, has been in several of our books. And so we felt that they needed a story of their own. This is their second flying lesson that they've had. And Rico has always wanted to be able to fly, but he had to take care of his younger brother after his parents were killed. And so he never had the opportunity to do a lot of things that he wanted to do, and flying was one of them. He and Melanie have become close outside of the cockpit. They've had dinner together, but it's all been very casual. They like each other and there's a strong attraction. But Melanie is a widow and she's not looking for love, and Rico isn't ready to settle down. Bert Lyle and Tom Harrison hijacked their small plane as Melanie and Rico are getting ready to take the taxi off the runway and take off. And Melanie and Rico were only going to go up for about an hour and stay close to the airport because there's a storm coming in over the mountain and it would be dangerous to fly that way. Bert, Lyle, and Harrison tell Melanie to fly towards the mountains. And she laughs at them because it's ridiculous, because it's suicide. She tells them that there's a storm on the mountains. We can't take this plane up there. It's not safe. And Lyle puts a gun to her head and tells her, "You do it or I'll shoot you." And Melanie realizes it may be too late for her to tell Rico that she has feelings for him. And Rico has feelings for her. He tries to sacrifice himself by saying he's the better pilot and to leave her there and he'll fly them out. And of course, that doesn't happen. Once they're in the storm, the plane is thrown back and forth, and she knows the plane will crash. And the only thing that she can do is to turn around and go back towards the airport. And she knows if she does that, it'll be dangerous because Lyle said he will shoot her. So she does it anyway. She turns back towards the airport and he fires the gun. The storm rages and the plane crashes into the trees, and Rico is trying to make a safe landing. The two convicts make it out of the plane and leave Mel and Rico either unconscious or dead, still trapped in their seatbelts, and the convicts take off on foot into the mountains.
And if you want to know what's really gone on there, read the book, everybody. Now, Charlene, Dark Flight is a smaller book than Angel Falls. So a lot of the chapters are smaller. And the last area of the book we're going to explore is chapter 27, everybody, which I think sets the book up for the final run, but still not giving the ending away. If you want to know what the ending is, guess what I'm going to say, everybody? Get the books. Now, Charlene, chapter 27. Here we have Melanie and Rico, lucky to be alive from the plane crash earlier on that day. And Rico Espinosa, that is, opening up about his childhood. And then, just as you're getting into that story, you switch the storyline in the same chapter to Bobby and Bella. So very briefly, Charlene, without going into too much detail, because please don't give the plot away, because I think this chapter is setting the scene for the forthcoming chapters. Where are you taking us here? What are you up to, you two?
Okay. This chapter has two very exciting scenes. In scene one, after the plane crashes, Melanie and Rico manage to get out of the plane, and they've become very close. And this near-death experience makes them realize how fleeting life can be. So while they're waiting for morning light so they can make their way back down the mountain, they start talking and they want to know more about one another. Rico tells her that his father had killed his mother and then killed himself. His father was drunk and died when he drove his car off a cliff. And then when the police arrived, they also found his mother dead in the car, and she had been shot. So he had a tragic childhood. Afterward, Rico was left to take care of his younger brother, Nathan. The local sheriff took Rico under his wing and gave him a job as a dispatcher, and then he worked his way up to deputy sheriff. And this scene reveals his character, and we learn how brave and how responsible he is. And then the scene switches to the forest. In the next scene, Bella and the women and children hear the sound of the plane crashing into the trees, and they're at their campground. Bella has a premonition that the bad men are coming. She tells young Bobby to follow the river on horseback and go for help. And Bobby is frightened, very frightened, but he bravely rides off into the forest and rides until dark, until he's forced to stop to avoid injury to his horse. And the reader learns that in an earlier book, the doctor who was there on the camping trip and her husband had adopted this brave little boy. So that leaves the 4 women and the remaining 2 children alone to fend off the 2 deranged criminals who will soon confront them. Fortunately, Bella is there, and their fate is up to her. Hoping to save them, she devises a brave and ingenious plan, which I will not tell you about.
Don't do that, no. So let's leave it there, everybody. This is the cliffhanger. We're leaving it there. So that's Dark Flights, everybody. Now, I want to know, you two, what's next coming down the line? You know, is it going to be another book in the Angel Falls series? Or are you going to concentrate on another one of your series? So, Judy, what's going to happen now with the next books or your next adventures?
Well, right now we are working on a prequel to our Chance O'Brien series, which the lead book is When an Angel Whispers. And that, I'm sorry, it's Angel Falls up here. I'm sorry, the lead book for Angel Falls. And it's about Bella. We're talking about when she was younger and how she met her husband, Reggie, who, when the Angel Falls series started, was deceased for many years. And so then after that, we're probably going to go to our Chance O'Brien series and write our 6th book in that series, and then write another book in our second Chance Romance series that has Accidental Angel, Angel's Heart. So we're going to be pretty busy for the next year.
Sure are, sure are. Now let's turn to the marketing lady here. Charlene, who do you see or who do you want to see reading your books? Young people, mature folk, women, guys? Who?
Well, our books appeal to people of all ages, as long as they like to read mysteries with a love story, because that's what our books are. People tell us that they really identify with our characters, and they think that the Angel Falls series reminds them of the Netflix series Virgin River. So that kind of gives you an idea of who might enjoy the books. All of our books are available on Kindle Unlimited, So if you really like to binge read series, you can do so very easily.
Where can people get your books from, Charlene?
They are on Amazon.com in the Kindle store. And to find them, all you have to do is to go to Amazon, go to the books, and then type in my name or type in Judy's name. Sometimes both of our names come up together when you type one of them in, and it'll take you to our book pages, and all of our books are there. It doesn't really matter which of our names you use.
And if you take a look behind Charlene, everybody, there you can see the covers on the back wall there of Angel Falls and Dark Flight. Well, I have to say, Charlene and Judy, it's been a great pleasure again chatting to you about your books and a bit about yourselves. So I would just like to say a huge thank you to you both. I'm JT Crowley. So wherever you're in the world, until next time, stay safe.